Question 1. What factors determine the appropriate process for implementing changes to IBM Cognos ICM compensation plans from a stakeholder perspective, considering data integrity and regulatory compliance? Option A. The perceived urgency of the request from the most senior business stakeholder involved in the compensation plan. Option B. The extent of the proposed changes' impact on data accuracy, system security, auditability, and the alignment of the change with established business rules and regulatory requirements. Option C. The direct cost associated with making the proposed change to the IBM Cognos ICM system. Option D. The ease with which the requested change can be technically implemented within the IBM Cognos ICM system, regardless of broader implications. The correct answer is B. The extent of the proposed changes' impact on data accuracy, system security, auditability, and the alignment of the change with established business rules and regulatory requirements. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate needs of business stakeholders with the long-term implications of data governance and system integrity within the IBM Cognos ICM environment. The core challenge lies in ensuring that changes, while potentially beneficial for reporting or analysis, do not compromise the accuracy, security, or auditability of the compensation data, which is often sensitive and subject to regulatory scrutiny. Careful judgment is required to avoid introducing errors, violating data privacy principles, or creating inefficiencies that could lead to compliance issues or financial misstatements. The correct approach, which prioritizes a structured change management process involving thorough impact assessment and stakeholder alignment, represents best professional practice. This aligns with general principles of robust IT governance and data management, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that demand accuracy, integrity, and auditability of financial and compensation-related data. By involving all relevant parties, including IT, business users, and potentially compliance or audit teams, this approach ensures that potential risks are identified and mitigated before implementation. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of data breaches, reporting errors, or non-compliance with internal policies and external regulations. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal change control and directly implements user requests without proper validation poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This could lead to unauthorized access or modification of sensitive compensation data, violating data privacy regulations and internal security policies. Furthermore, implementing changes without a thorough impact assessment increases the risk of introducing data inaccuracies or system instability, which could result in incorrect commission payouts, financial misstatements, and potential legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the perceived urgency of a single stakeholder's request without considering broader system implications, fails to uphold the principle of data integrity and can lead to a fragmented and unreliable compensation system. This disregard for systematic governance can also create an environment where compliance is seen as optional, leading to a breakdown in audit trails and accountability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the request's business objective. This should be followed by a comprehensive impact assessment, considering technical, operational, and compliance aspects. Engaging all relevant stakeholders early in the process is crucial for gathering diverse perspectives and ensuring buy-in. A formal change management process, including testing and validation, should be followed before any implementation. Finally, ongoing monitoring and review of system performance and data accuracy are essential to maintain the integrity and reliability of the IBM Cognos ICM system. Question 2. When evaluating the potential impact of a new regulatory requirement on an existing IBM Cognos ICM implementation, which of the following approaches best ensures a comprehensive and compliant outcome? Option A. Conduct a detailed review of all data sources, calculation logic, reporting outputs, and user access controls, engaging with relevant subject matter experts to validate findings and quantify necessary changes and risks. Option B. Focus exclusively on the core calculation engine within IBM Cognos ICM, assuming upstream data and downstream reporting are unaffected by the new regulation. Option C. Expedite the assessment by making broad assumptions about the impact across all modules and user groups without detailed investigation. Option D. Rely solely on existing system documentation, assuming it accurately reflects all current configurations and is sufficient to interpret the new regulatory requirements. Correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed review of all data sources, calculation logic, reporting outputs, and user access controls, engaging with relevant subject matter experts to validate findings and quantify necessary changes and risks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in financial services where a new regulatory requirement necessitates changes to existing systems and processes. The professional must balance the need for compliance with the practicalities of implementation, including resource allocation, potential disruption, and the accuracy of the impact assessment itself. The challenge lies in ensuring that the assessment is comprehensive, realistic, and adequately addresses all potential ramifications without over or underestimating the effort and risk involved. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and thorough review of all affected areas within IBM Cognos ICM. This includes identifying all relevant data sources, calculation logic, reporting structures, and user access controls that might be impacted by the new regulation. It requires engaging with subject matter experts across different departments, e.g., compliance, IT, business operations, to gather detailed information and validate assumptions. The assessment should quantify the effort required for any necessary modifications, testing, and training, and identify potential risks and mitigation strategies. This comprehensive and collaborative approach ensures that the impact assessment is accurate, actionable, and aligns with regulatory expectations for due diligence and proactive compliance. It demonstrates a commitment to understanding the full scope of the change and planning accordingly, which is a cornerstone of responsible financial operations and regulatory adherence. Incorrect approach is analysis, focusing solely on the direct calculation logic within IBM Cognos ICM without considering upstream data feeds or downstream reporting outputs, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This narrow view would likely lead to an incomplete impact assessment, potentially missing critical compliance gaps, and resulting in non-compliance with the new regulation. It fails to acknowledge the interconnectedness of systems and processes, a fundamental principle in robust risk management and regulatory oversight. Assuming that existing documentation is entirely sufficient without validation or consultation with subject matter experts is another failure. Regulatory requirements are often nuanced, and interpretations can vary. Relying on outdated or incomplete documentation can lead to misinterpretations of the regulation's impact on the specific implementation of IBM Cognos ICM, thereby risking noncompliance. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to engage in the necessary investigative work to ensure accurate understanding. Prioritizing speed of assessment over thoroughness by making broad assumptions without detailed investigation is also professionally unacceptable. This can lead to underestimation of the required effort, resources, and potential risks, ultimately jeopardizing the successful implementation of compliant processes. It suggests a disregard for the accuracy and integrity of the assessment, which is crucial for informed decision-making and regulatory compliance. This approach prioritizes expediency over accuracy and diligence, which is contrary to ethical professional conduct and regulatory expectations. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should adopt a structured, risk-based approach. First, clearly define the scope of the regulatory change and its potential applicability to IBM Cognos ICM. Second, engage a cross-functional team of subject matter experts to conduct a detailed review of all affected components, from data ingestion to report generation and user access. Third, document all findings, assumptions, and identified impacts, including resource estimates and timelines. Fourth, identify and assess potential risks and develop mitigation plans. Finally, obtain sign-off from relevant stakeholders and regulatory compliance officers, ensuring transparency and accountability throughout the process. This methodical approach ensures that all aspects of the impact are considered, leading to a robust and defensible assessment that supports effective compliance. Question 3. The audit findings indicate a recurring bottleneck in the commission calculation process, leading to delays in payouts and increased manual intervention. Which of the following approaches best addresses this issue while adhering to best practices for process optimization within IBM Cognos ICM? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the existing commission calculation workflow within IBM Cognos ICM to identify specific pain points and implement targeted process optimizations. Option B. Increase the frequency of manual overrides to clear the backlog of pending commission calculations. Option C. Defer any process changes until a complete system overhaul of IBM Cognos ICM can be undertaken. Option D. Implement cosmetic changes to the user interface of IBM Cognos ICM to improve user experience without altering the calculation logic. Correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the existing commission calculation workflow within IBM Cognos ICM to identify specific pain points and implement targeted process optimizations. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a recurring bottleneck in the commission calculation process, leading to delays in payouts and increased manual intervention. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts operational efficiency, financial accuracy, and potentially regulatory compliance related to timely compensation. The pressure to resolve these issues quickly without compromising data integrity or introducing new risks requires careful judgment. The correct approach, which involves a systematic review of the existing commission calculation workflow, identifying specific pain points, and implementing targeted process optimizations within IBM Cognos ICM, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of efficient system management and continuous improvement, ensuring that the system accurately and promptly reflects commission entitlements. This approach is also implicitly supported by guidelines that emphasize the importance of accurate and timely financial reporting and operational efficiency, which are critical for maintaining stakeholder trust and meeting business objectives. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing the frequency of manual overrides to clear backlogs is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the underlying process issues, leading to a higher risk of errors, inconsistent application of commission rules, and potential breaches of internal controls. It also fails to address the root cause, making the problem persistent and potentially escalating it. Such an approach could also violate principles of data integrity and auditability, as manual overrides can obscure the true calculation logic and make it difficult to trace discrepancies. Another incorrect approach, which involves deferring any process changes until a complete system overhaul is feasible, is also professionally unsound. While a full system overhaul might be a long-term goal, neglecting immediate process optimization opportunities leads to continued inefficiency and risk. This passive stance fails to uphold the professional responsibility to actively manage and improve systems under one's purview. It also ignores the potential for incremental improvements to yield significant benefits in the short to medium term. Finally, an approach that prioritizes cosmetic changes to the user interface without addressing the core calculation logic is also inappropriate. While user experience is important, it does not resolve the fundamental issues causing calculation delays and errors. This superficial fix would fail to achieve the desired operational improvements and could mislead stakeholders into believing the problem is resolved when it is not. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the core problem, clearly define the symptoms and their impact. 2. Root cause analysis, investigate the underlying reasons for the inefficiency. 3. Solution evaluation, assess potential solutions based on effectiveness, efficiency, risk, and alignment with business objectives. 4. Prioritization, determine the most impactful and feasible optimization. 5. Implementation and monitoring, execute the chosen solutions and track their performance. 6. Continuous improvement, regularly review processes for further enhancement. Question 4. The evaluation methodology shows that IBM Cognos ICM is designed to provide objective and unbiased performance reporting. A manager, reviewing a draft report generated by the system, asks a junior analyst to tweak the presentation of a specific metric to make a particular team's performance appear more favorable, stating it's for internal morale purposes and won't affect the underlying data. The analyst is concerned about compromising the report's integrity. What is the most appropriate course of action for the analyst? Option A. Agree to the manager's request, as it is an internal matter and the underlying data remains unchanged, prioritizing team morale as instructed. Option B. Proceed with the requested alteration, but add a disclaimer to the report noting that the presentation has been adjusted for motivational purposes. Option C. Directly question the manager's understanding of reporting standards and their intent behind the request, highlighting the potential for misinterpretation. Option D. Politely decline the request, explaining that the system's integrity and objective reporting are paramount, and offer to discuss alternative ways to present performance data that do not involve altering the visual representation of the core metric. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the request, explaining that the system's integrity and objective reporting are paramount, and offer to discuss alternative ways to present performance data that do not involve altering the visual representation of the core metric. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the potential for bias and the imperative to maintain data integrity within IBM Cognos ICM. The core of the dilemma lies in a manager's request to manipulate data presentation, which, while seemingly minor, could undermine the objective reporting that Cognos ICM is designed to facilitate. The need for careful judgment arises from the manager's position of authority and the subtle nature of the requested change, which might not be immediately recognized as unethical or non-compliant. The correct approach, which involves politely but firmly declining the request and explaining the commitment to objective reporting and data integrity, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty, integrity, and professional responsibility, which are paramount in data management and reporting. Specifically, it upholds the principle of providing accurate and unbiased information, cornerstone of regulatory compliance and client trust. By adhering to the established reporting methodology and refusing to alter data presentation for subjective reasons, the professional demonstrates a commitment to the integrity of the system and the information it generates. An incorrect approach of agreeing to the manager's request without question would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It would violate the principle of data integrity, potentially leading to misinformed decisions by stakeholders who rely on the reports. This could also contravene internal company policies regarding data manipulation and external regulations that mandate accurate financial or performance reporting. Another incorrect approach, that of questioning the manager's motives or competence, is unprofessional and counterproductive. While the request is problematic, focusing on the manager's intent rather than the action itself escalates the situation unnecessarily and does not resolve the core issue of data integrity. It also risks damaging professional relationships without achieving the desired outcome of maintaining objective reporting. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's ethical guidelines and regulatory obligations. When faced with a request that appears to compromise data integrity or objectivity, the professional should first assess the request against these principles. If the request is found to be problematic, the next step is to communicate concerns clearly and professionally, explaining the rationale based on established standards and policies. The focus should remain on the data and the reporting process, not on personal judgments about the requester. If the manager persists, escalating the issue through appropriate channels, such as a compliance officer or a superior, should be considered, always documenting the interaction and the rationale for the decision. Question 5. Process analysis reveals that a new data integration for IBM Cognos ICM has been developed to source critical sales performance metrics from a newly acquired subsidiary. While the integration is technically functional, there are concerns regarding the historical data quality from the subsidiary and the potential for discrepancies in the new data feed. The business requires these metrics for immediate inclusion in the upcoming quarterly performance reports. What is the most prudent approach to manage this implementation challenge? Option A. Postpone the integration indefinitely until absolute certainty regarding the subsidiary's historical data quality and the new data feed's accuracy can be achieved. Option B. Deploy the new integration immediately to meet the reporting deadline and address any data discrepancies as they are identified by end users. Option C. Implement the new integration in a pilot phase for a limited set of users and data, with rigorous validation checks and reconciliation processes in place before a full rollout. Option D. Rely solely on the subsidiary's existing data validation procedures, assuming their data is inherently accurate and compatible with the existing ICM system. The correct answer is B. Deploy the new integration immediately to meet the reporting deadline and address any data discrepancies as they are identified by end users. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in IBM Cognos ICM, where a critical business process relies on accurate and timely data from an external source. The challenge lies in balancing the need for immediate reporting with the potential for data integrity issues arising from a new, unproven integration. A failure to properly validate the data before it impacts downstream reporting can lead to significant financial misstatements, regulatory breaches, and loss of stakeholder confidence. The pressure to deliver reports quickly can create a conflict between speed and accuracy, requiring careful judgment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data integrity and regulatory compliance by implementing a phased rollout with robust validation checks. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that any potential data issues are identified and rectified in a controlled environment before widespread impact. From a regulatory perspective, this demonstrates due diligence in maintaining accurate financial records, a fundamental requirement under relevant financial reporting standards. Ethically, it upholds the principle of transparency and accuracy in reporting. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately deploying the new integration without any interim validation. This poses a significant regulatory risk as it directly violates the principle of accurate financial reporting. If the data is flawed, it could lead to misstated financial statements, triggering penalties and reputational damage. Ethically, this approach prioritizes expediency over accuracy, potentially misleading stakeholders. Another incorrect approach is to delay the integration indefinitely due to concerns about data quality, without establishing a clear plan for resolution. This can lead to operational inefficiencies and a failure to meet business objectives, potentially impacting the organization's ability to comply with reporting deadlines. While it avoids immediate data integrity risks, it creates new risks related to operational effectiveness and compliance with reporting obligations. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on end-user feedback to identify data issues after deployment. This is reactive and places an undue burden on business users to act as data quality controllers. It represents a failure in proactive risk management and can lead to significant delays in issue resolution, impacting reporting timelines and potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to system implementations. This involves identifying potential risks, assessing their impact, and developing mitigation strategies. In this case, the primary risk is data inaccuracy. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the business criticality of the data. 2. Evaluating the reliability of the new data source and integration method. 3. Defining clear data validation criteria. 4. Implementing a staged rollout with comprehensive testing and monitoring. And 5. Establishing clear escalation paths for identified issues. This structured approach ensures that business needs are met while upholding regulatory and ethical standards. Question 6. Market research demonstrates that IBM Cognos ICM has identified a significant trend in consumer spending patterns that is not yet publicly known. The product management team is preparing a detailed report on these findings, which is expected to be released in 2 weeks. A key client has inquired about any upcoming insights that might influence their investment strategy. What is the most appropriate course of action for the IBM Cognos ICM professional? Option A. Advise the client that no information can be shared until the report is officially published, and then suggest they wait for the public release. Option B. Confirm the public availability of the data, and if it is not yet public, explain that the findings will be released in the upcoming report and offer to notify them once it is publicly available. Option C. Share the preliminary findings with the client immediately, as they are a key client and their insights are valuable for refining the report. Option D. Provide the client with a summary of the preliminary findings, emphasizing that it is for their internal use only and should not be shared further. The correct answer is B. Confirm the public availability of the data, and if it is not yet public, explain that the findings will be released in the upcoming report and offer to notify them once it is publicly available. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely and accurate information with the potential for that information to be misinterpreted or misused, leading to market manipulation or unfair advantage. The core of the challenge lies in the responsible dissemination of material non-public information, M&PI, within the context of financial markets. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any information shared adheres to regulatory guidelines designed to maintain market integrity and investor confidence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the regulatory framework governing the disclosure of information. Specifically, it ensures that any information shared is either publicly available or has been appropriately disclosed through official channels, thereby preventing the selective disclosure of MNPI. This aligns with the principles of fair dealing and market abuse regulations, which prohibit the use of MNPI for personal gain or to disadvantage other market participants. By confirming the public availability of the data, the professional acts with integrity and upholds the regulatory expectation of transparency and equal access to information for all investors. An incorrect approach that involves sharing the preliminary findings directly with a select group of clients before public release would constitute a serious regulatory and ethical failure. This action would be a clear breach of rules against selective disclosure and insider trading, as it provides an unfair advantage to those clients who receive the information before the broader market. Such a failure erodes market confidence and can lead to significant penalties, including fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the release of the information indefinitely to avoid any potential issues, is also professionally unacceptable. It avoids the risk of selective disclosure. It hinders the efficient functioning of the market by withholding potentially valuable information from investors. This can lead to suboptimal investment decisions and a less efficient allocation of capital. Furthermore, in certain contexts, there may be a regulatory obligation to disclose material information in a timely manner. A third incorrect approach, which is to share the information with a trusted colleague for their opinion without considering the implications of its non-public nature, also represents a regulatory and ethical lapse. Even within an organization, the dissemination of MNPI must be controlled and limited to those with a legitimate need to know and who are bound by confidentiality agreements. Sharing it informally, even with a colleague, risks further unauthorized disclosure and potential market abuse. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear framework. 1. Identify the nature of the information. Is it material? Is it non-public? 2. Assess the regulatory environment. What are the specific rules regarding disclosure and MNPI in the relevant jurisdiction? 3. Consider the potential impact of disclosure. Who would benefit? Who would be disadvantaged? Could this lead to market manipulation? 4. Determine the appropriate disclosure channel. Is it publicly available? Does it require formal announcement? 5. Seek guidance if uncertain. Consult with compliance or legal departments when in doubt. 6. Prioritize integrity and fairness. Always act in a manner that upholds market integrity and treats all investors equitably. Question 7. Market research demonstrates that different business units within a financial services firm have varying levels of understanding and access to IBM Cognos ICM performance data. A senior manager in the sales department requests direct access to raw, unvalidated commission accrual figures for their team, citing a need to motivate staff. Simultaneously, the compliance department requires a summary of overall sales performance for regulatory reporting, but has expressed concerns about the potential for data manipulation if raw figures are shared broadly. Which of the following approaches best balances the needs of these stakeholders while adhering to professional conduct and regulatory expectations within the UK financial services framework? Option A. Facilitate a meeting where a designated representative from the IBM Cognos ICM support team presents validated, summarized sales performance data to the sales department, and then provide the compliance department with the official, validated reports generated through the standard reporting process. Option B. Provide the sales department with direct, read-only access to the raw commission accrual data within IBM Cognos ICM. The disclaimer that the data is unvalidated. Option C. Grant the sales department access to a separate, simplified dashboard within IBM Cognos ICM that displays pre-calculated, validated team performance metrics, and provide the compliance department with the same validated reports as usual. Option D. Share aggregated and anonymized sales performance data with all departments, explaining that specific team-level raw data cannot be disclosed due to its sensitive nature. Correct answer is B. Provide the sales department with direct, read-only access to the raw commission accrual data within IBM Cognos ICM, with a disclaimer that the data is unvalidated. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the need for timely and accurate financial reporting and the potential for misinterpretation or misuse of sensitive performance data by different stakeholder groups. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that information shared from IBM Cognos ICM is presented in a way that is both informative and compliant with the relevant regulatory framework, which for this exam is assumed to be the UK Regulatory Environment and CISI guidelines. The correct approach prioritizes transparency and adherence to established reporting protocols, ensuring that all performance data is validated and presented through the official reporting channels. It upholds the integrity of financial information and prevents unauthorized disclosure or selective interpretation. This aligns with CISI principles of professional conduct, which emphasize honesty, integrity, and competence, and the UK regulatory emphasis on accurate and timely disclosure of material information. Incorrect approaches fail to uphold these standards. Disclosing raw, unvalidated data to a specific department, even if they are stakeholders, bypasses necessary checks and balances, increasing the risk of errors or misrepresentations that could mislead decision-making. This could be seen as a breach of duty of care and potentially violate regulations requiring accurate financial reporting. Sharing aggregated, anonymized data without proper context or disclaimer risks oversimplification and can lead to inaccurate conclusions, undermining the principle of providing clear and understandable information. Furthermore, withholding information from certain stakeholders while providing it to others, even if not explicitly forbidden, can create an uneven playing field and raise ethical concerns about fairness and impartiality, which are central to professional conduct. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all relevant stakeholders and their legitimate information needs. This should be followed by a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory requirements and internal policies governing data disclosure. The next step involves assessing the nature of the data, its sensitivity, and the potential impact of its disclosure. Finally, professionals must select the most appropriate method of communication that ensures accuracy, transparency, and compliance, always erring on the side of caution and seeking clarification when in doubt. Question 8. The audit findings indicate that a critical data discrepancy has been identified within the IBM Cognos ICM system, impacting several key performance indicator reports. The system administrator, under pressure from management to rectify the reports immediately, is considering directly modifying the affected data in the production environment to align with the expected values, bypassing the standard change control and testing procedures. What is the most appropriate course of action for the system administrator in this situation? Option A. Attempt to manually adjust the report output to reflect the correct values without altering the underlying data in the IBM Cognos ICM system. Option B. Directly modify the production data to match the expected values without any documentation or approval, as the immediate need for accurate reports outweighs the procedural requirements. Option C. Immediately implement a documented emergency change request, clearly outlining the proposed data correction, the rationale, and the potential risks, and proceed with the correction only after obtaining necessary approvals, even if it causes a slight delay in report availability. Option D. Escalate the issue to senior management, highlighting the data discrepancy and the potential impact on reporting, and request guidance on how to proceed, even if it means temporarily disabling the affected reports. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement a documented emergency change request, clearly outlining the proposed data correction, the rationale, and the potential risks, and proceed with the correction only after obtaining necessary approvals, even if it causes a slight delay in report availability. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves a conflict between the immediate need to resolve a system issue and the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and adhere to established change management protocols. The pressure to quickly fix a problem that impacts reporting can lead to shortcuts that compromise accuracy and auditability. Careful judgment is required to balance the urgency of the situation with the long-term implications of data governance and regulatory compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a controlled and documented resolution. By following the established change management process, even under pressure, the team ensures that any modifications are reviewed, tested, and approved, minimizing the risk of introducing new errors or violating data integrity principles. This aligns with the fundamental ethical duty to act with competence and due care, and to uphold the integrity of financial and operational data, which is paramount in regulated environments. Adhering to documented procedures also supports auditability and accountability, crucial for demonstrating compliance with internal policies and external regulations. An incorrect approach that bypasses the change control process and directly modifies the data in production without proper authorization and testing is professionally unacceptable. This action represents a significant ethical failure by disregarding established controls designed to protect data integrity and system stability. It creates a direct risk of introducing errors, making it difficult to trace the source of issues and potentially leading to inaccurate reporting. This also undermines the principle of accountability, as the unauthorized changes are not properly logged or reviewed. Another incorrect approach, which involves making undocumented, ad hoc adjustments to the data without a clear understanding of the root cause, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and competence. It fails to address the underlying problem, potentially leading to recurring issues and further data corruption. Ethically, it violates the duty to act with integrity and to provide accurate information. A third incorrect approach, which involves delaying the resolution indefinitely due to fear of making a mistake, is also professionally unsound. While caution is important, inaction in the face of a known issue that impacts reporting can lead to greater problems and a loss of stakeholder confidence. It fails to meet the professional obligation to address issues in a timely and effective manner, while still respecting the need for proper procedures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear assessment of the impact of the issue, followed by an evaluation of available options within the established governance framework. If the standard process is too slow, the professional should escalate the issue to seek expedited approval for a controlled resolution, rather than bypassing controls. This involves clear communication with stakeholders about the risks and the proposed solution, ensuring transparency and accountability throughout the process. Question 9. Operational review demonstrates that the departmental performance reporting within IBM Cognos ICM is being generated, but there is a concern that the current presentation of metrics may lead to misinterpretations and potentially flawed strategic decisions. The reporting currently displays raw performance figures for each department without comparative benchmarks, historical trends, or qualitative explanations. Which of the following approaches best addresses this concern while adhering to professional reporting standards? Option A. Enhance the IBM Cognos ICM reports to include comparative data, e.g., against targets, historical performance, industry benchmarks, trend analysis, and relevant qualitative commentary to provide a comprehensive and contextualized view of departmental performance. Option B. Shift the focus of IBM Cognos ICM reporting to exclusively showcase short-term performance gains, assuming that long-term strategic implications will naturally align with these immediate successes. Option C. Continue to present raw performance figures as they are, as this provides an unadulterated view of departmental output, and any interpretation is the responsibility of the end user. Option D. Modify the IBM Cognos ICM reports to exclusively highlight metrics that demonstrate individual departmental underperformance, creating a clear focus on areas needing immediate corrective action. The correct answer is A. Enhance the IBM Cognos ICM reports to include comparative data, e.g., against targets, historical performance, industry benchmarks, trend analysis, and relevant qualitative commentary to provide a comprehensive and contextualized view of departmental performance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the need for timely and accurate financial reporting and the potential for misinterpretation or misuse of performance data. The pressure to demonstrate departmental efficiency, coupled with the complexity of IBM Cognos ICM's reporting capabilities, necessitates a nuanced understanding of how data is presented and consumed. The challenge lies in ensuring that the reporting mechanism, while informative, does not inadvertently lead to flawed strategic decisions or create an environment of undue pressure based on potentially incomplete or context-lacking metrics. Careful judgment is required to balance transparency with the responsible interpretation of performance indicators. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging IBM Cognos ICM's capabilities to provide context-rich performance reports. This means not just presenting raw numbers, but also incorporating comparative data, e.g., against targets, historical performance or peer groups, trend analysis, and qualitative explanations where appropriate. This aligns with professional best practices by promoting a holistic understanding of performance, enabling informed decision-making, and fostering accountability based on a comprehensive view rather than isolated metrics. This approach supports the ethical obligation to provide accurate and not misleading information, ensuring that stakeholders can interpret performance data responsibly. Incorrect approach is analysis. Presenting raw, uncontextualized performance metrics without any comparative data or trend analysis is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a breach of the ethical duty to provide accurate and not misleading information. It can lead to misinterpretations, fostering an environment where performance is judged in a vacuum, potentially leading to unfair assessments and poor strategic choices. This approach lacks the professional rigor required for effective performance management. Focusing solely on metrics that highlight individual underperformance without considering systemic factors or providing opportunities for improvement is also professionally unsound. This can create a punitive rather than a developmental environment, undermining team morale and potentially leading to ethical concerns regarding fair treatment and due process. It fails to uphold the professional responsibility to foster a supportive and growth-oriented work environment. Overemphasizing short-term performance fluctuations without considering long-term strategic goals or external market influences can lead to reactive and potentially detrimental decision-making. This approach neglects the professional obligation to consider the broader strategic context and can result in short-sighted actions that may not align with the organization's overall objectives. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes the responsible and ethical use of data. This involves 1. Understanding the audience and purpose of the report, who will see this data and what decisions will they make based on it. 2. Ensuring data accuracy and completeness. Is the data reliable and representative? 3. Providing context. How does this data compare to benchmarks, targets, or historical trends? 4. Facilitating interpretation. Are there qualitative explanations or insights that can help understand the data? 5. Promoting a balanced view. Does the reporting encourage a holistic understanding of performance, considering both successes and challenges? 6. Adhering to ethical guidelines. Is the reporting transparent, fair, and not misleading? Question 10. The monitoring system demonstrates an anomaly in transaction processing that could indicate a potential operational risk. What is the most appropriate next step to manage this identified risk? Option A. Initiate a detailed technical investigation by the IT department without assessing the business impact. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to determine the likelihood and potential impact of the anomaly. Option C. Log the anomaly and schedule a review of the transaction processing logs at the end of the business quarter. Option D. Immediately escalate the anomaly to senior management for a full operational shutdown pending investigation. Correct answer is D. Immediately escalate the anomaly to senior management for a full operational shutdown pending investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the monitoring system has identified a potential risk, but the nature of the risk and its implications are not immediately clear. The challenge lies in determining the most appropriate and compliant response without overreacting or underestimating the severity. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for proactive risk management with the efficient allocation of resources. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and documented process of risk assessment. This aligns with regulatory expectations for robust risk management frameworks, which mandate that identified risks be evaluated based on their likelihood and impact. By categorizing the risk and determining its potential impact, an informed decision can be made regarding the necessary mitigation strategies. This structured approach ensures that actions taken are proportionate to the identified risk and are defensible to regulators. It also promotes a culture of continuous improvement by learning from identified risks. An incorrect approach that involves immediate escalation without proper assessment fails to demonstrate due diligence. It can lead to unnecessary panic, misallocation of resources, and a perception of an immature risk management process. This approach might violate principles of proportionality and efficiency expected in regulatory compliance. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the alert due to its perceived low severity without any form of documented assessment, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for the monitoring system's findings and a failure to adhere to the organization's risk management policies. This could lead to the materialization of the risk, resulting in financial losses, reputational damage, or regulatory sanctions. It directly contravenes the duty of care expected of professionals in managing potential threats. A further incorrect approach, which is to conduct a superficial review without proper documentation or follow-up, is also professionally unacceptable. While it might appear to address the alert, it lacks the rigor required for effective risk management and auditability. Regulators expect a clear audit trail of risk assessments and decisions. This approach undermines the integrity of the risk management process and leaves the organization vulnerable. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging and logging the alert. 2. Conducting a preliminary assessment to understand the nature of the alert. 3. Performing a formal risk assessment, considering likelihood and impact. 4. Documenting the assessment and the rationale for any decisions made. 5. Implementing appropriate mitigation or control measures based on the assessment. 6. Monitoring the effectiveness of these measures and reviewing the risk periodically. This structured approach ensures compliance, promotes accountability, and fosters effective risk mitigation. Question 11. Cost-benefit analysis shows that upgrading the IBM Cognos ICM system offers significant projected cost savings and improved reporting efficiency. However, the proposed upgrade involves changes to data handling processes that could potentially impact data integrity and introduce new security vulnerabilities. From a stakeholder perspective, which approach best balances the financial benefits with the imperative to maintain data integrity and comply with regulatory requirements? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment focusing on data integrity and security vulnerabilities, involving compliance and data governance teams, to inform a phased upgrade plan that prioritizes risk mitigation. Option B. Implement the upgrade with minimal changes to current data handling processes, focusing only on the functional improvements outlined in the cost-benefit analysis. Option C. Prioritize the upgrade based solely on the projected return on investment, assuming that existing data security measures will be sufficient to protect against any new vulnerabilities. Option D. Proceed with the upgrade immediately to realize the projected cost savings, deferring detailed data integrity checks and security enhancements until after the system is live. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the upgrade immediately to realize the projected cost savings, deferring detailed data integrity checks and security enhancements until after the system is live. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate, tangible benefits of a proposed system upgrade against the less quantifiable, but potentially significant, risks associated with data integrity and regulatory compliance. The stakeholder perspective is crucial here, as different groups will have varying priorities and risk appetites. The finance department might focus on the projected cost savings and ROI, while the compliance department will be concerned with adherence to data governance regulations. The challenge lies in synthesizing these diverse viewpoints into a decision that is both financially sound and legally defensible. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, risk-based assessment that aligns with regulatory expectations for data management and system implementation. By engaging all relevant stakeholders, particularly those responsible for compliance and data governance, the organization ensures that potential risks are identified and mitigated before implementation. This proactive stance is essential for maintaining data integrity, which is a fundamental requirement under various data protection and financial reporting regulations. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible system development and deployment, minimizing the likelihood of future data breaches, inaccuracies, or non-compliance penalties. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the projected cost savings without adequately addressing data security and integrity would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate the implicit regulatory obligation to maintain accurate and secure data, which underpins financial reporting and customer trust. Such an approach risks significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and potential legal action if data breaches or inaccuracies occur. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes a rapid deployment to capture short-term benefits while acknowledging data risks but deferring mitigation is also professionally unsound. This deferral creates a window of vulnerability, increasing the likelihood of data compromise or non-compliance during the transition period. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the ongoing responsibility to protect sensitive information. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the business objectives and the proposed solution. This should be followed by a detailed risk assessment, specifically focusing on data integrity, security, and regulatory compliance. Crucially, this assessment must involve input from all affected departments, especially legal and compliance. The next step is to develop mitigation strategies for identified risks, which may include enhanced security protocols, data validation procedures, or phased implementation. Finally, the decision should be based on a holistic evaluation of costs, benefits, and risks, ensuring that compliance and data integrity are not compromised for the sake of expediency or short-term financial gains. Question 12. The assessment process reveals a significant and unexpected upward trend in a key performance indicator, KPI, for a specific business unit, which directly impacts their incentive payouts calculated via IBM Cognos ICM. This trend appears inconsistent with broader market conditions and the unit's historical performance, raising concerns about potential data manipulation or misinterpretation of the metric. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for the compensation analyst responsible for managing this ICM environment? Option A. Assume the trend is an anomaly due to external market factors and proceed with the current incentive calculations without further investigation. Option B. Advise the business unit manager to temporarily suspend incentive calculations for their unit until the anomaly can be resolved. Option C. Immediately inform senior management and the legal department about the potential data integrity issue and await their directive on how to proceed. Option D. Initiate a detailed, data-driven investigation into the specific KPI and the business unit's activities, gathering evidence from the ICM system and relevant operational data before engaging with the business unit. The correct answer is D. Initiate a detailed, data-driven investigation into the specific KPI and the business unit's activities, gathering evidence from the ICM system and relevant operational data before engaging with the business unit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in performance management where a business unit's performance metrics, crucial for incentive calculations within IBM Cognos ICM, are flagged for potential manipulation. The challenge lies in balancing the need to ensure data integrity and fairness in compensation with the risk of alienating a key business unit or creating an overly punitive environment. The professional must navigate this situation with a keen understanding of both the technical capabilities of ICM and the ethical and regulatory implications of compensation practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation. This aligns with best professional practice by prioritizing objectivity and evidence. By initiating a detailed review of the specific metrics and the business unit's activities, the professional demonstrates a commitment to understanding the root cause of the anomaly. This approach respects the integrity of the ICM system and the compensation plans it supports. It also adheres to principles of fairness and transparency, ensuring that incentive calculations are based on accurate and verifiable data, which is a fundamental ethical and often regulatory expectation in compensation. The focus on collaboration with the business unit, once initial findings are established, promotes a constructive resolution rather than immediate accusation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately escalating the issue to senior management and legal counsel without conducting an initial, internal investigation. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses due diligence and can lead to premature, potentially unfounded accusations. It erodes trust and can create unnecessary alarm, potentially impacting employee morale and the reputation of the compensation process. It also fails to leverage the diagnostic capabilities of ICM to gather objective evidence. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the anomaly as a minor fluctuation without further inquiry. This is a significant ethical and professional failure, as it neglects the potential for deliberate manipulation. which could lead to unfair compensation outcomes for other employees or misrepresentation of business performance. It also risks undermining the credibility of the entire incentive compensation system and the data it relies upon, potentially violating principles of accuracy and accountability expected in financial reporting and compensation administration. A third incorrect approach is to unilaterally adjust the performance metrics or the ICM configuration to correct the anomaly without proper documentation or consultation. This is a serious breach of governance and ethical practice. It introduces bias into the system, undermines the established performance criteria, and can lead to disputes over compensation. It also fails to address the underlying issue, which could be a systemic problem or a deliberate attempt at manipulation that needs to be understood and rectified properly. Such actions can have legal ramifications if they are perceived as attempts to manipulate financial results or compensation outcomes. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a structured, evidence-based approach. First, leverage the analytical tools available within IBM Cognos ICM to gather detailed data on the flagged metrics and the contributing factors. Second, conduct a discrete, internal review to identify patterns, anomalies, and potential causes. Third, if the initial review suggests a genuine issue, engage with the relevant business unit in a fact-finding capacity, presenting data and seeking explanations. Fourth, based on the findings, determine the appropriate course of action, which could range from system adjustments and training to disciplinary measures, always ensuring documentation and adherence to company policy and regulatory guidelines. This methodical process ensures fairness, accuracy, and compliance. Question 13. The risk matrix shows a concentration of high-impact, low-likelihood risks in the operational and compliance categories. When presenting this to the Executive Committee for Strategic Planning, which approach best facilitates informed decision-making and responsible risk management? Option A. Display the raw risk matrix and allow the Executive Committee to draw their own conclusions about the implications for strategic planning. Option B. Highlight only the operational risks, as these are often perceived as more immediate and controllable, and suggest a general increase in internal controls. Option C. Focus on the compliance risks, recommending a significant investment in new technology to address them, without detailing the specific operational risks identified. Option D. Present the risk matrix with a detailed explanation of the potential impact of each high-risk item, linking these impacts to specific strategic objectives, and proposing tailored mitigation strategies for each. The correct answer is D. Present the risk matrix with a detailed explanation of the potential impact of each high-risk item, linking these impacts to specific strategic objectives, and proposing tailored mitigation strategies for each. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely and accurate reporting with the potential for misinterpretation or misuse of risk information. The risk matrix, common tool in financial services, categorizes risks based on their likelihood and impact. When presenting this information, especially in a decision-making context, it is crucial to ensure that the audience understands the nuances and limitations of the data. The challenge lies in communicating complex risk profiles in a way that facilitates informed decisions without oversimplifying or creating a false sense of certainty. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes clarity, context, and actionable insights. By focusing on the implications of the identified risks for strategic objectives and recommending specific mitigation strategies, it moves beyond mere data presentation to active risk management. This aligns with regulatory expectations that firms not only identify risks, but also have robust processes for managing them. Providing a clear narrative that links risk levels to potential business outcomes and outlines concrete steps for remediation demonstrates a commitment to prudent risk governance and informed decision-making, which are fundamental to maintaining financial stability and client trust. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the highest risk categories without considering their strategic relevance or potential impact on different business units fails to provide a holistic view. This can lead to misallocation of resources or undue alarm, potentially diverting attention from other critical areas. Such an approach might also violate ethical obligations to provide balanced and comprehensive information, potentially misleading stakeholders. Another incorrect approach, which involves presenting the raw risk matrix without any interpretation or context, abdicates the professional responsibility to guide decision-makers. This can result in confusion, inaction, or decisions based on incomplete understanding, which could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence and could have regulatory implications if it leads to poor business outcomes. A third incorrect approach, which emphasizes only the risks that are easiest to mitigate, ignores the potential for significant impact from less easily addressed risks. This selective presentation is ethically questionable, as it can create a misleading impression of the overall risk landscape and may not adequately protect the firm or its clients from material threats. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the audience and the purpose of the risk information. This involves translating raw data into meaningful insights, considering the strategic context, and proposing concrete actions. The process should involve 1. Clearly defining the objective of the risk assessment and presentation. 2. Identifying the key risks and their potential impact on business objectives. 3. Developing clear and concise communication strategies that provide context and actionable recommendations. And 4. Establishing a feedback loop to ensure that decisions are informed and that risk management strategies are effective. Question 14. System analysis indicates that a business analyst configuring IBM Cognos ICM has received a request from a senior stakeholder to implement a specific data transformation rule that bypasses the standard, documented change control process. The stakeholder asserts the change is urgent and critical for immediate reporting needs. The analyst is aware that the standard process involves a formal change request, impact assessment, and approval from a change advisory board, which would take several days. What is the most professionally responsible course of action for the business analyst? Option A. Escalate the request through the established change management process, clearly documenting the stakeholder's urgency and the potential impact of delays, while seeking interim guidance on managing the immediate reporting need. Option B. Implement the change immediately as requested by the senior stakeholder to meet the urgent reporting needs, assuming their authority to override standard procedures. Option C. Implement the change after obtaining informal verbal approval from the senior stakeholder, documenting this verbal approval in the system notes. Option D. Refuse to implement the change, citing the strict adherence to documented procedures and the lack of formal approval, without offering any alternative solutions. Correct answer is A. Escalate the request through the established change management process, clearly documenting the stakeholder's urgency and the potential impact of delays, while seeking interim guidance on managing the immediate reporting need. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a business analyst, responsible for configuring IBM Cognos ICM, encounters a situation that deviates from standard procedures. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient system implementation with the imperative to adhere to established governance and control frameworks. The analyst must exercise sound judgment to determine the appropriate course of action when faced with a request that bypasses documented approval processes. This requires an understanding of the potential risks associated with such deviations, including data integrity issues, audit trail deficiencies, and non-compliance with internal policies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves escalating the request through the established change management and governance channels. This represents best professional practice because it upholds the principles of accountability, transparency, and control. By following the documented procedures for requesting and approving system changes, the analyst ensures that the modification is reviewed by appropriate stakeholders, its impact is assessed, and it is properly authorized. This aligns with regulatory expectations for robust internal controls and auditability, ensuring that all system configurations are traceable and justifiable. In the context of IBM Cognos ICM, this would typically involve submitting a formal change request, detailing the proposed modification, its business justification, and potential risks, for review by a change advisory board or relevant management. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the change without proper authorization bypasses critical control mechanisms. This creates a significant regulatory and ethical failure by undermining the audit trail. If an issue arises later, it will be difficult to determine who authorized the change and why, potentially leading to non-compliance with data governance regulations and internal audit requirements. It also exposes the organization to operational risks if the change introduces errors or unintended consequences. Directly refusing the request without understanding the underlying business need or exploring alternative, compliance solutions can be professionally unhelpful and may lead to strained working relationships. While adherence to process is crucial, a complete lack of engagement with the business request can be seen as a failure in collaborative problem solving, potentially hindering business objectives without a clear justification based on risk or compliance. Seeking informal approval from a single manager, even if they appear to have authority, is insufficient. This circumvents the formal governance process designed to ensure comprehensive review and documented approval from all relevant parties. It creates a weak audit trail and increases the risk of the change not being fully understood or its implications being overlooked by other critical stakeholders, leading to potential compliance breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals in system configuration roles should employ a structured decision-making framework when faced with non-standard requests. This framework typically involves 1. Understanding the request, clearly ascertain the business need and the proposed technical solution. 2. Identifying deviations. Recognize any aspects of the request that deviate from established policies, procedures, or best practices. 3. Assessing risks and impact. Evaluate the potential technical, operational, and compliance risks associated with the deviation. 4. Consulting governance frameworks. Refer to internal policies, change management procedures, and relevant regulatory guidelines. 5. Escalating appropriately. If the deviation cannot be resolved within standard procedures, escalate the request to the appropriate governance body or management for review and decision. 6. Documenting decisions. Ensure all requests, assessments, and decisions are thoroughly documented for auditability and future reference. Question 15. Risk assessment procedures indicate that an upcoming critical update to the IBM Cognos ICM system will introduce significant changes affecting various business units. Considering the diverse roles and technical proficiencies of stakeholders, which approach to communicating these changes is most likely to ensure effective stakeholder engagement and minimize disruption? Option A. Post a brief announcement on the company intranet about the upcoming IBM Cognos ICM update and wait for stakeholders to inquire if they require further information. Option B. Prioritize communication solely on the intricate technical modifications within the IBM Cognos ICM update, assuming all stakeholders will understand the implications. Option C. Develop a single, comprehensive communication document detailing all technical specifications and deployment timelines for the IBM Cognos ICM update and distribute it to all stakeholders. Option D. Segment stakeholders into distinct groups based on their roles and anticipated impact from the IBM Cognos ICM update, and then craft tailored communications for each group, highlighting relevant information and actions required. The correct answer is C. Develop a single, comprehensive communication document detailing all technical specifications and deployment timelines for the IBM Cognos ICM update and distribute it to all stakeholders. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in managing stakeholder expectations and ensuring accurate, timely communication regarding a critical system update. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for comprehensive information with the risk of overwhelming or confusing stakeholders, particularly those with varying levels of technical understanding. The urgency of the update, coupled with the potential for disruption, necessitates a strategic approach to communication that prioritizes clarity, relevance, and actionable insights. Failure to manage this effectively can lead to misinterpretations, delays in adoption, and erosion of trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves segmenting stakeholders and tailoring communication based on their specific roles, technical expertise, and impact from the IBM Cognos ICM update, represents best professional practice. This aligns with general principles of effective stakeholder management and communication, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks emphasizing transparency and due diligence. By providing targeted information, such as detailed technical specifications to IT teams and high-level impact summaries to executive leadership, organizations ensure that each stakeholder group receives the most relevant and actionable intelligence. This minimizes confusion, facilitates informed decision-making, and promotes smoother system adoption, thereby mitigating operational and compliance risks. Incorrect approaches analysis. Providing a single, generic communication to all stakeholders, regardless of their role or technical background, is professionally unacceptable. This approach fails to acknowledge the diverse needs and comprehension levels of different stakeholder groups. It can lead to information overload for some, while others may receive insufficient detail to understand the implications of the IBM Cognos ICM update. This lack of tailored communication can result in misunderstandings, resistance to change, and potential noncompliance if critical instructions are missed or misinterpreted. Focusing solely on the technical aspects of the IBM Cognos ICM update without considering the business impact or user experience is also professionally unsound. While technical accuracy is important, stakeholders who are not technically inclined will struggle to grasp the significance of the changes. This can lead to a disconnect between IT operations and business objectives, hindering the effective utilization of the updated system, and potentially creating new risks if business processes are not adequately adapted. Delaying communication until the IBM Cognos ICM update is fully implemented is a critical failure. This approach violates principles of proactive communication and stakeholder engagement. It denies stakeholders the opportunity to prepare, ask questions, or provide feedback, leading to surprise, potential disruption, and a perception of a lack of transparency. Such delays can also impede the identification and mitigation of unforeseen issues, increasing the likelihood of operational problems and potential regulatory breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to stakeholder communication. This involves first identifying all relevant stakeholders and categorizing them based on their influence, interest, and impact. Subsequently, the communication strategy should be developed by considering the specific information needs, preferred communication channels, and technical literacy of each stakeholder group. Regular feedback loops should be established to address concerns and ensure alignment. This proactive and tailored approach fosters trust, facilitates informed decision-making, and ultimately contributes to the successful implementation and adoption of system updates like those involving IBM Cognos ICM, while adhering to implicit expectations of good governance and operational integrity. Question 16. Assessment of how an advisor should respond when a client, experiencing anxiety due to recent market volatility, requests a significant shift to highly speculative investments, contradicting their previously established moderate risk tolerance and long-term financial goals. Option A. Recommend a single, high-return speculative product that promises quick recovery of potential losses, without a comprehensive review of the client's overall financial situation. Option B. Refuse to consider any changes to the client's investment strategy, insisting on adherence to the original plan regardless of current market conditions or client sentiment. Option C. Immediately execute the client's request to invest in speculative assets to alleviate their immediate anxiety and demonstrate responsiveness to their expressed wishes. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the client's current financial situation, risk tolerance, and investment objectives, and then propose a diversified portfolio that aligns with their established risk profile, explaining the rationale and potential outcomes of both maintaining the current strategy and any proposed adjustments. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the client's current financial situation, risk tolerance, and investment objectives, and then propose a diversified portfolio that aligns with their established risk profile, explaining the rationale and potential outcomes of both maintaining the current strategy and any proposed adjustments. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in financial advisory, where a client's stated investment goals conflict with their risk tolerance and the prevailing market conditions. The advisor must navigate the client's emotional responses to market volatility while adhering to regulatory obligations to act in the client's best interest. The pressure to meet sales targets or retain a client can create a conflict of interest, making objective advice paramount. The advisor's responsibility extends beyond simply presenting product options. It involves educating the client, managing expectations, and ensuring that any recommended course of action is suitable and aligned with regulatory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough reassessment of the client's financial situation, risk tolerance, and investment objectives. This involves a detailed discussion to understand the root cause of the client's desire to shift to a more aggressive strategy, potentially uncovering underlying anxieties or misunderstandings about market fluctuations. By proposing a diversified portfolio that aligns with their previously established risk profile, even if it means a slower growth trajectory. The advisor demonstrates adherence to the Know Your Client (KIC) principles and the duty to provide suitable advice. This approach upholds the regulatory framework's emphasis on client protection and fiduciary responsibility, ensuring that recommendations are based on the client's best interest rather than short-term market sentiment or potential advisor incentives. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately agreeing to the client's request to invest in high-risk speculative assets without a comprehensive review. This fails to meet the regulatory obligation to assess suitability and could lead to significant financial harm to the client if the market moves unfavorably. It prioritizes client satisfaction over client well-being and regulatory compliance. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the client's concerns outright and refuse to discuss any changes, citing past decisions. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and a failure to adapt advice to evolving client needs or market realities. While maintaining a disciplined investment strategy is important, rigidly adhering to an outdated plan without considering the client's current perspective and the broader economic environment can be detrimental and may breach the duty of care. A third incorrect approach is to push a specific high-return product without adequately explaining its risks or ensuring it aligns with the client's overall financial plan. This could be driven by internal sales targets or a desire for higher commissions, creating a conflict of interest and potentially violating regulations against misrepresentation or unsuitable product pushing. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with active listening and empathetic engagement with the client's concerns. This is followed by a rigorous reevaluation of the client's financial profile, including their risk tolerance, investment objectives, and time horizon. Any proposed recommendations must then be assessed for suitability against these parameters and in the context of current market conditions and regulatory guidelines. Transparency regarding risks and potential outcomes is crucial. If a client's request deviates significantly from their established profile or appears driven by emotional responses, the professional has a duty to educate and guide them towards a more prudent course of action, even if it means disagreeing with the client's initial preference. This process ensures that advice remains objective, compliant, and in the client's best long-term interest. Question 17. Comparative studies suggest that the implementation of new software versions can introduce unforeseen risks to data integrity and reporting accuracy. A financial services firm is considering upgrading its IBM Cognos ICM system to a newer version. Which of the following actions best demonstrates a proactive and compliant approach to managing the potential impact of this upgrade? Option A. Conducting a detailed impact assessment that meticulously reviews data lineage, report functionality, security configurations, and user access controls to identify and mitigate potential risks before deployment. Option B. Prioritizing the upgrade based solely on the perceived technical benefits and speed of implementation, deferring any detailed impact analysis until after the system is live. Option C. Relying on the vendor's assurance that the new version is backward compatible and will not affect existing data or reports, proceeding with the upgrade immediately. Option D. Performing a quick, high-level review of the upgrade notes and deploying the new version to a small group of internal users for initial feedback. Correct answer is A. Conducting a detailed impact assessment that meticulously reviews data lineage, report functionality, security configurations, and user access controls to identify and mitigate potential risks before deployment. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in financial services, balancing the need for efficient system upgrades with the imperative to protect client data and maintain regulatory compliance. The core of the challenge lies in the potential impact of a new IBM Cognos ICM version on existing data integrity, reporting accuracy, and the firm's ability to meet its regulatory obligations, particularly concerning data privacy and reporting timeliness. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to identify and mitigate risks before deployment. The correct approach, which involves a comprehensive impact assessment that scrutinizes data lineage, report functionality, security protocols, and user access controls, represents best professional practice. This aligns with regulatory expectations for robust risk management and data governance. Specifically, in the context of financial services, Regulations often mandate that firms have processes in place to ensure the accuracy and integrity of client data and financial reporting. A detailed impact assessment directly supports these requirements by proactively identifying potential disruptions and ensuring that the new system version does not compromise these critical functions or introduce new compliance risks. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to client protection and regulatory adherence. An incorrect approach that bypasses a thorough impact assessment and proceeds with a superficial review risks significant regulatory and ethical failures. For instance, failing to assess data lineage could lead to inaccurate reporting, violating regulations that require precise financial disclosures. Neglecting to evaluate security protocol changes might expose sensitive client information, breaching data protection laws and ethical duties of confidentiality. Similarly, overlooking the impact on user access controls could result in unauthorized data access, a serious compliance violation. These failures not only expose the firm to regulatory penalties and reputational damage, but also erode client trust. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a structured risk-based approach. First, identify all potential areas of impact, including data, reporting, security, and user functions. Second, evaluate the likelihood and severity of each potential impact. Third, develop mitigation strategies for identified risks. Fourth, document the entire assessment process and the decisions made. Finally, ensure that all stakeholders, including compliance and IT departments, are involved, and that the assessment is reviewed and approved by appropriate management before proceeding with any system changes. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with regulatory and ethical standards. Question 18. Market research demonstrates that a significant portion of the client base is interested in a new investment product. To understand this interest further and tailor marketing efforts, a team proposes to analyze client transaction histories and demographic information. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical data handling practices? Option A. Utilize raw, identifiable client transaction histories and demographic data to create detailed client profiles for targeted marketing, as this provides the most accurate insights for product development. Option B. Anonymize and aggregate client transaction data and demographic information to identify trends and patterns related to the new product interest, without retaining any personally identifiable information. Option C. Conduct a survey directly asking clients about their interest in the new product, using their responses to segment and target them for future communications, without any further data analysis. Option D. Share anonymized client transaction data with a third-party marketing analytics firm to gain external insights, as this will broaden the understanding of market sentiment. The correct answer is B. Anonymize and aggregate client transaction data and demographic information to identify trends and patterns related to the new product interest, without retaining any personally identifiable information. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in regulatory compliance where the interpretation and application of guidelines can be nuanced, especially when dealing with data privacy and reporting requirements within a specific financial services context. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive data analysis to inform business strategy with the stringent obligations to protect client data and adhere to reporting standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any data used, even for internal market research, is handled in a manner that is both compliant and ethically sound. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data anonymization and aggregation for any analysis or reporting. This aligns with the core principles of data protection regulations, which mandate that personal data should not be identifiable. By anonymizing and aggregating data, the firm upholds its commitment to client privacy while still being able to derive valuable insights from the market research. This proactive measure ensures compliance with data privacy laws and ethical standards by minimizing the risk of data breaches or unauthorized access to sensitive client information. An incorrect approach that involves using raw, identifiable client data for market research, even if intended for internal use, poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This directly violates data privacy principles and could lead to breaches of regulations such as GDPR, if applicable to the exam's jurisdiction, or similar data protection laws. The ethical failure stems from a lack of respect for client confidentiality and trust. Another incorrect approach, which involves sharing anonymized data with external third parties without explicit consent or a clear legal basis, also represents a regulatory failure. While the data may be anonymized, the act of sharing it without proper authorization can still contravene data protection frameworks and breach contractual obligations or client agreements. The ethical failure here is a breach of trust and potential misuse of information. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the regulatory requirements applicable to the data being handled. This involves understanding data privacy laws, reporting obligations, and any specific industry guidelines. Next, assess the sensitivity of the data and the potential risks associated with its use. Develop a clear data handling policy that outlines procedures for collection, storage, processing, and sharing, with a strong emphasis on anonymization and aggregation where possible. When in doubt, consult with legal and compliance departments to ensure all actions are fully compliant. This systematic approach ensures that business objectives are pursued responsibly and ethically, safeguarding both the firm and its clients. Question 19. To address the challenge of ensuring the accuracy of financial data used in regulatory submissions generated through IBM Cognos ICM, a financial analyst discovers a discrepancy between the data in the ICM system and the source accounting ledger. Which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant approach to resolving this issue? Option A. Immediately adjust the data within IBM Cognos ICM to match the source ledger, documenting the change as a manual correction without further investigation. Option B. Initiate a detailed reconciliation process, comparing line item details between IBM Cognos ICM and the source ledger, identifying the root cause of the discrepancy, and then applying a documented correction to the appropriate system. Option C. Assume the source ledger is incorrect and proceed with reporting based on the IBM Cognos ICM data, as it is the system used for the final submission. Option D. Inform the IT department to investigate the IBM Cognos ICM system for a potential bug, without independently verifying the data against the source ledger. The correct answer is A. Immediately adjust the data within IBM Cognos ICM to match the source ledger, documenting the change as a manual correction without further investigation. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in financial reporting and analysis, ensuring the accuracy and integrity of data used for regulatory submissions, specifically within the context of IBM Cognos ICM Essentials. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for timely reporting with the imperative of data validation, especially when dealing with potentially complex and interconnected financial data. A failure in data accuracy can lead to misstatements, regulatory penalties, and damage to the firm's reputation. Careful judgment is required to identify and rectify data discrepancies before they impact critical financial outputs. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic and documented process for data validation and reconciliation. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that all data feeding into regulatory reports has undergone rigorous scrutiny. Specifically, within the framework of IBM Cognos ICM Essentials, this involves leveraging the system's built-in validation rules, cross-referencing data with source systems, and maintaining an audit trail of any adjustments or corrections. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of errors, enhances transparency, and demonstrates compliance with internal controls and potential regulatory expectations for data integrity. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately performs data validation poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. For instance, relying solely on automated system checks without manual oversight or independent verification could allow subtle errors to propagate. This failure to exercise due diligence in data handling can be construed as a breach of professional responsibility, potentially violating regulations that mandate accurate financial reporting. Furthermore, it undermines the trust placed in the financial information provided to stakeholders and regulators. Another incorrect approach might involve making ad hoc adjustments without proper documentation or justification. This lack of transparency and auditability makes it impossible to trace the origin of data and can lead to accusations of manipulation or negligence, again contravening regulatory requirements for clear and auditable financial records. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the reporting requirements, the capabilities of the reporting tools, like IBM Cognos ICM, and the firm's internal control policies. When discrepancies are identified, the professional should first attempt to understand the root cause. This involves tracing the data back to its source and comparing it with other reliable data points. If an error is confirmed, the correction should be made following established procedures, with all changes meticulously documented. The impact of the error on previous reports and future calculations should also be assessed. This structured approach ensures that decisions are not only technically sound, but also ethically defensible and compliant with regulatory frameworks. Question 20. The control framework reveals that IBM Cognos ICM is being used to aggregate sales performance data for commission calculations. However, a significant number of data discrepancies are being identified during the final reporting phase, leading to delays in commission payouts and employee dissatisfaction. Which approach best addresses this control weakness while ensuring the integrity of commission calculations? Option A. Focus solely on improving the speed of data aggregation within IBM Cognos ICM, assuming that minor discrepancies will be addressed by individual sales representatives post-reporting. Option B. Implement automated data validation rules within IBM Cognos ICM to flag and quarantine discrepancies for investigation and resolution before final data aggregation and reporting. Option C. Expedite the final reporting process by manually overriding identified discrepancies without a formal investigation process to ensure timely payouts. Option D. Remove the data validation steps from the IBM Cognos ICM process to avoid delays, relying entirely on the source system's data integrity. The correct answer is B. Implement automated data validation rules within IBM Cognos ICM to flag and quarantine discrepancies for investigation and resolution before final data aggregation and reporting. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in performance management systems, where the integrity of data and the fairness of outcomes are paramount. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for timely reporting with the imperative to ensure data accuracy and prevent potential manipulation, especially when compensation is directly linked to performance metrics. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate risks without unduly hindering operational efficiency. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data validation and reconciliation before final reporting. This aligns with fundamental principles of financial reporting and internal control, ensuring that decisions based on the data are reliable and defensible. In the context of IBM Cognos ICM, this means leveraging its capabilities for data cleansing, rule-based validation, and audit trails to establish a robust process. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of errors impacting compensation calculations, which can lead to disputes, regulatory scrutiny, and damage to employee morale and organizational reputation. Adhering to internal control frameworks and potentially relevant financial reporting standards, depending on the specific industry and jurisdiction, though for this exam, we focus on the principles within the tool's application, necessitates accuracy and transparency. An incorrect approach that bypasses validation steps before reporting is professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to implement adequate internal controls, increasing the likelihood of inaccurate performance assessments and compensation payouts. Such a failure could lead to regulatory noncompliance if the reporting is subject to external audit or specific industry regulations requiring data integrity. Ethically, it is a breach of trust with employees who rely on accurate performance data for their remuneration. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the speed of data aggregation without considering the underlying data quality, ignores the fundamental purpose of performance management. While efficiency is desirable, it should not come at the expense of accuracy. This approach risks propagating errors through the system, leading to the same negative consequences as bypassing validation. A third incorrect approach, relying on manual overrides for all discrepancies without a defined process for investigation and approval, introduces significant subjectivity and potential for bias. This undermines the objectivity of the performance management system and creates an audit trail that is difficult to follow, increasing the risk of manipulation and regulatory issues. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. First, Identify the critical data points and their impact on key outcomes, e.g., compensation. Second, evaluate the existing data sources and the inherent risks of error or manipulation. Third, design and implement validation rules and reconciliation processes within the IBM Cognos ICM system to mitigate these risks. Fourth, establish clear procedures for investigating and resolving discrepancies, ensuring proper documentation and approvals. Finally, regularly review and test the effectiveness of these controls.